This will be the last lesson for this chapter, chapter 2, section 2.3, the end of an empire. Go to LODA-USD website and go ahead, launch Clever, and from Clever, Cengage Learning, which is our world history book. Log in with your student account, and from the left side, Unit 1, Chapter 2, the Byzantine Empire, Section 2, the Later Empire, and Lesson 3, the End of an Empire, pages 54 to 55. As for the chapter's essential question, how did the Byzantine Empire carry on the culture and traditions of the old Western Roman Empire? The objective of this lesson is to explain the factors that weakened the Byzantine Empire and ultimately destroyed it. To provide additional information besides the information that you have in your textbook, the Bubonic Plague contributed to the decline of the Byzantine Empire. And yes, we will revisit this Bubonic Plague. The plague that hit the empire in the 6th century had a death rate from 40 to 70% of its cases. The plague lasted for 4 months, during which time daily life and work in the city of Constantinople stopped. The plague had a devastating impact on the empire's economy, which is primarily agricultural, like farming. One of the immediate effects was the loss of farmers. So this in turn led to shortage of food and famines after the plague ended. The diminished population resulted in a smaller tax base, meaning the money or the resources that was collected by the government, by the kingdom, from the people, which led to financial hardship for the empire. So on May 29, 1453, the last Byzantine emperor died fighting as his enemies swarmed through his capital's shattered walls. That day, the Byzantine Empire ended. It was a heroic finale for an empire that had survived against the odds for 1,000 years. So the main idea was that after Justinian, the empire experienced invasions and another golden age, meaning a time of prosperity and peace, before it finally collapsed. Again, the date was the 29th of May, 1453. Now let's talk about deaths and invasions. So after Justinian died in 565, the empire was bankrupt. And it was worsened by the plague. A lot of people died, and most of them are farmers. So there's a shortage of food, and the declined population caused the empire to collect small amount of taxes. And as you collect small amount of taxes to the people who are already suffering, they will not be happy about it. And it was worsened each day as invasions or threats of invasion are looming around the empire. So to make the situation worse, or even worse, Byzantium's old enemies, including the Persians, renewed their attacks on the empire's borders. So then, by 634, the Byzantine Empire confronted a new rival, the religion of Islam, which had united Arab tribes who formed a mighty Muslim army. So this newly formed army not only conquered territories of the Byzantine Empire, but also conquered countries that supply the basic needs of Constantinople, say for example Egypt for their grain. And also the Arabs conquered Syria, Egypt, and part of Southwest Asia as far as North Africa and the Persian Empire itself. So the Byzantine Empire is an empire for a reason. And its army will not go down easily. They have this secret weapon called the Greek fire. In this illustration here, you'll see how this liquid fire works. So the Greek fire was a weapon developed by the Byzantine Empire and mostly used in sea battles. The liquid fire was shot out of tubes mounted on a ship and kept burning even when it hit the water, as illustrated in this painting. And no, this is not a middle school drawing. So this is a 12th century manuscript, a primary source document. And of course, even with this war technology, eventually the Byzantine Empire collapsed. But before that final collapse, they experienced another golden age or years of prosperity and peace across the empire. Now let's talk about the new golden age and fall. So just like what I said, they are an empire for a reason. They are down but not out. So by around 1000, they entered a new golden age or year of prosperity and peace across the empire. Well, it is not as good as the first golden age. Under the leadership of Basil II, Byzantium reigned more control over trade, restored many of Constantinople's buildings and institutions, and spread Christianity among Slavic people to the north. Well, this golden age was short-lived. Well, really not that short because it's about 96 years. What happened was an army of Christian Europeans launched a series of wars called the Crusades to fight the spread of Islam. The Crusaders soon came into conflict with the Byzantine leaders, and by 1204, they sacked Constantinople and occupied the city until 1261. These are Christians supposedly helping the Byzantine Empire, but because of their greed for money, eventually they fought against each other. Because of this invasion, it greatly weakened the empire. And then the Turks came, a people who had migrated into the region. By 1450, the Turks, who were Muslims, controlled all lands around Constantinople. The city stood alone and surrounded by fierce warriors. And finally, in 1453, Mehmed II, the Turkish ruler, launched an army of 100,000 men against Constantinople's walls. The city defenders, in contrast, number about 7,000. So that is about 93,000 deficit. On May 29, 1453, the Turks launched its final assault. They broke through the city's walls and killed the last Byzantine emperor, Constantine VI. What an odd end, because Constantinople was founded by, Constantine. As he charged into the invading army, by nightfall, Constantinople was under Turkish control. The remaining half of the mighty Roman Empire ended. Now let's take a look at this painting that shows the invasion of Constantinople by the Crusaders. Now there is a critical viewing question here. Based on this painting, how would you describe the battle? This painting is available in your book, and I want you to analyze this image and see what are the things that are portrayed here. You'll see that it happened where, and how would you describe the scenarios that were portrayed here. Finally, let's go to the review and assess questions. The first one, reading check. What was one factor that led to the decline and collapse of the Byzantine Empire? And number two, analyze cause and effect. Why was the plague able to spread so quickly throughout Constantinople? And finally, question number three, sequence of events. What events took place in Byzantium's during 1000s or the year 1000? You need to write this question on the left side because for some reason it was not included. So you will need to type this or copy and paste this question to your review and assess file. Okay, that's it. That's lesson 2.3 of chapter 2, the Byzantine Empire, section 2, lesson 3, the end of an empire. Now go to Google Classroom and open the review and assess assignment and answer the questions. Again, you will need to type question number 3 for the sequence of events. So this is in pages 54 to 55. You will need to write the title of the lesson. That is super easy. Answer the questions, and you will need to write question number 3. And you will write the answer on the right side of the slide, and you will find the answer here in lesson 2.3, the end of an empire. So that's it.